Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Ruffman. I am your host, John Ruffman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. The tragic news from Washington, D.C. of the cold-blooded murder of Yoram Lashinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram shocked us all. A murderer, Elias Rodriguez, accosted them as they came out of the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. It was not an event sponsored by Israel. It was an event sponsored by the American Jewish Committee. And these two young people were shot dead in the street. This is something so appalling, so shocking. It sends shivers up and down the spine of every American. And yes, all Jews in America understand what happened. The shooter, Elias Rodriguez, cried out, "Free Palestine," as he committed this heinous act. I want you to know that I really think about what to say, what to do when I do these podcasts. But this morning I am so overwhelmed with grief because of the senseless killing of these two young people on the verge of a life together in Washington, D.C. This is a moment which we must mark and understand. Terror strikes in Washington, D.C. And there was another moment yesterday that absolutely appalled me. And that was the fact that South African President Cyril Ramaphosa met with the President of the United States in the Oval Office. I sat transfixed as I listened to the discussion going on between these two men. First of all, the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, conducted himself with great dignity in the face of all the insults, and that's what they were, that Donald Trump hurled. The idea that white farmers are being exterminated, destroyed in South Africa is absurd. The president called it a genocide, and you watched President Ramaphosa respond gently to him. No. And what was even worse is the information that Donald Trump was using came from extremist movements in South Africa, white supremacists, and Donald Trump accepted it. This was an embarrassing moment for the United States, a shameful moment in the Oval Office. And it goes to show you my concern about Donald Trump. But you all know that if you listen regularly. And then there was a vote. It took place early this morning. Yesterday, I titled my podcast 3 votes, because that's the margin the Republicans had for control of the House. But this morning it was 1 vote, 215 to 214. There is no doubt in my mind that when you read this bill, you will understand that it does go after Medicare. It does go after Medicaid. It does go after people who need help. It is absolutely shocking. But the good news is that the Republicans put themselves on the line. Speaker Johnson and Donald Trump and the Republican leadership in the House were able to pass this bill by 1 vote. Now, you know that it goes to reconciliation, and that when it gets to the Senate, there will be many changes. But the simple truth is that the Republican Party, the party of Donald Trump, revealed itself for what it is. The attack on Medicare, Medicaid, and so many programs. Well, we'll have to see how it goes. This will not be a bill that will be easily passed in the Senate. There will be many modifications. It will have to go back to the House. But it is a triumph for Donald Trump, who used all his powers of persuasion. And I must tell you, this bill is a shameful moment in the history of the Republican Party. I want to say a word about the Justice Department. The Justice Department today is going after members of Congress and judges who oppose Trump. I've mentioned before that prior to the election, I spoke with a very good friend of mine who is a Trump supporter, and I asked him about the question of revenge and reprisal. And his answer was, oh, he doesn't mean it, it's just campaign rhetoric. We now know it was not just campaign rhetoric. The weaponization of the Justice Department and the attacks on members of Congress and on federal judges goes beyond the pale. Never before have we had a president of the United States of America sit in the Oval Office and conduct himself in this fashion. I want you all to understand that whether it is the president of South Africa or the president of Ukraine, whether it is dealing with judges, whether it is, frankly, dealing with members of Congress, this president's arrogance and, frankly, his lack of civility should shock every American. I want to conclude by pointing out what I said at the very beginning about Yoram Lashinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram and their murder in Washington, D.C. We live in a time in which the irrational is made rational by people who simply don't get it. Well, we on Around the Political World with John Rothman understand. We are not going to be silent in the face of what Donald Trump is doing, or what terror might do to the Jewish community, or what we all feel so completely about what Donald Trump is doing to Congress. This is a moment when the American people must stand up and be counted. And this is a moment when the world must stand up and be counted. We are in a battle, a great battle, to make sure that our lives continue in a clear and precise fashion toward the ultimate goal of peace and justice. In these last few hours, we have seen that there is a determination by forces to undermine what we believe is so vital. I want to close this podcast by saying that the tragic circumstances that we are seeing unfold, and as I have recounted them in this podcast, should shake every single one of us to our very foundations. And we should be more resolved than ever, more determined than ever to resist this kind of horrific determination. I say this regretfully, but emphatically. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which, of course, is our goal. I also want to indicate that I want to hear what you have to say. You can email me, or on Instagram or on Facebook, you can respond to me in terms of what I'm saying. I urge you to put this out, let people hear it, and, of course, make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, sharing an episode with a friend or colleague, so we can continue to grow and expand. And my special thanks, of course, to the wonderful producer of this program, Gogo Zoger. Without her, well, I wouldn't be up and running. So, thanks, Gogo. And to all of you, I will see you tomorrow. I hope the news is better. I am John Rothman, and you are listening to Around the Political World with John Rothman.